Welcome to The Dogs Were Good Again. Today, I'd like to take you back to mid-20th century Soviet Union. A small mixed-breed dog wanders the streets of Moscow. She is about 3 years old, her temperament described as calm and composed. It was the space race, and the Russians were on a tight timeline to get Sputnik 2 into orbit. In an attempt to show strength, they would send this stray dog on a one-way trip to the stars. This is the story of Laika, the lost dog, last seen in orbit. This will be a fully scripted episode. Shout out to Candy from A History of Dogs, a wonderful Instagram follow, for putting a lot of this information together for me. If you enjoy this episode, give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already. There's a long list of historical dogs we can do entire episodes on, so please let us know if this is a format you'd like us to continue. Content warning for animal death and distress, and apologies if I butcher some of these Soviet names.
Oh, that looks like a good dog. That's a good dog. Yeah, that looks like a good dog. A very good dog.
Of course, before we get into all of that, we have an adoptable guest. Please join me in welcoming our adoptable special guest, Kodi. Hi! Welcome to the show. Oh my goodness. Hello. He's 7, if you can wow. Just gonna sit for the cameras. He's 7, if you can believe that. Let's see here. Let me tell you all about him. So Kodi is a 7-year-old, 14-pound Maltese mix available for adoption from Wags and Walks here in LA. And I met him in the little lobby over there, and he's kind of perfect. He did get a haircut, so he's like in that awkward stage of growing out his hair, but I still can't believe he's 7. He looks so much younger. Right? Yeah. Hi. This bed is entirely for you. It's true. The bed is entirely for you. He knows shake and you don't even have to like prompt it. Oh, okay. Well, that's perfect. If you stay there, then you win like best behaved dog of 40 straight episodes. You're the best. Yeah. Oh, you can do that too. Okay, yeah, just stay right here and you're going to get adopted in no time. Wags and Walks said they recently rescued him from a local LA shelter, and he's been coming out of his shell ever since. Kodi is a happy, sweet guy who loves to meet new people and cuddle up on the couch for naps and snuggles. He is fully potty trained, does well in his crate, and is working diligently on his leash manners. He would thrive with an adopter who will continue to build his confidence, help him learn his training basics, and make him feel secure and loved. If you're looking for a sweet, low-key best friend, Kodi could be your guy. Kodi's adoption fee is covered by Elizabeth and Christian in honor of their beloved Samoyed, Riley. They told us, we want another family to enjoy the love and companionship of a good dog. Everything was better shared with Riley. You can see Riley there. Riley was with us for 14 and a half years, from 2003 to 2017. That is quite a life, especially for a larger dog like a Samoyed. If you'd like to sponsor a future special guest adoption fee, you can email podcast@weratedogs.com. Thank you again, Elizabeth and Christian. There we go. And that's for you too. We did get some additional insight on Kodi, and that's that he is incredibly chill and he enjoys people watching as well. So, I mean, your home is out there, and he'll like lean back and look at you like this. After the success of Sputnik 1, the first Earth-orbiting satellite in history, the Soviets wanted a spacecraft launched in celebration of the 40th anniversary of the October Revolution. That was the revolution that initially established a communist regime. To meet their tight deadline, they planned for a new, relatively simple satellite to be built. But Sergei Korolev, the lead Soviet rocket engineer and spacecraft designer, went a step further and proposed that a dog be placed on board. Everyone jumped on the idea. It was the space race after all. The competition between Cold War rivals, the United States and the Soviet Union, to achieve superior spaceflight capability. Both countries were attempting to one-up each other like testosterone-addled teenage boys. At this point, the Soviets had already sent 9 dogs into suborbital space. People have reported 12 dogs before Laika, but we think it's 9 dogs flown on 6 launches, with 3 of them flying twice. But they had never gotten one to orbit the Earth. They were on a tight deadline, so they got to work. When choosing which dog to launch, Soviet canine recruiters began with a herd of female stray dogs. They wanted females because they were smaller and apparently more docile. They wanted a dog that was ultimately very obedient and passive. And they chose strays because they assumed they had already learned to endure extreme conditions like cold and hunger. Plus, they were free and there were loads of them. Enter Laika. She was a mutt found wandering the streets of Moscow. It's thought that she was part husky or another Nordic breed, and possibly part terrier. She weighed between 11 and 13 pounds and was estimated to be 3 years old. Her temperament was described as phlegmatic. She was calm and composed. She was originally named Kodrovka, Russian for Little Curly, but was renamed Laika, which is barker in Russian, when she was introduced to the public via radio show and she chose to bark. She had several other names and nicknames, including Little Bug, Little Lemon, and Mutnik, a pun on Sputnik given by the American press. Ultimately, 3 dogs were trained for the Sputnik 2 flight: Albina, Mushka, and Laika. To get them to adapt to the confines of the tiny cabin of Sputnik 2, they were kept in progressively smaller cages for periods of up to 20 days. They were placed in centrifuges that simulated the acceleration of a rocket launch and in machines that simulated the noises of the spacecraft. They were also trained to eat a special high-nutrition gel that would be their food in space. This was made up of 40% breadcrumbs, 40% powdered meat, and 20% beef fat mixed with agar and water. Medical devices were embedded in their bodies to measure their breathing, pulse, blood pressure, and physical movement. Albina, Laika's backup, had already flown twice on a high-altitude test rocket. She wasn't picked as the primary dog because she had recently given birth to 3 puppies. Yazdovsky, one of the Soviet space life scientists in charge of training the dogs, thought it cruel to separate a mother from their children. The third dog, Mushka, was a control dog. She was to stay on the ground and be used to test instrumentation and life support. 10 days before the launch, Laika was chosen as the flight dog. Before the launch, Yazdovsky took Laika home to play with his children. He later wrote, "Laika was quiet and charming. I wanted to do something nice for her. She had so little time left to live." It is reported that he also let her sleep in his bed. On October 31st, 1957, 3 days before liftoff, Laika was placed in the capsule of the satellite. It was a constricted space that allowed for only a few inches of movement. 2 assistants were assigned to keep constant watch on her before launch. The craft was equipped with an oxygen generator, a fan to keep her cool, enough food for a 7-day flight, and Laika was fitted with a bag to collect waste. She could stand, sit, or lie down, but there was no room to turn around in the cabin. One of the technicians preparing the capsule before final liftoff stated, "After placing Laika in the container and before closing the hatch, we kissed her nose and wished her bon voyage, knowing that she would not survive the flight." There are accounts that the last words Laika heard were, "Please forgive us," whispered to her by a Russian biologist. On November 3rd, Laika was sent on a one-way mission to space. The Soviet Union expected her to die from oxygen deprivation, a painless death within 15 seconds, after 7 days in space. During and after the flight, the Soviet Union kept up the fiction that Laika survived for several days, and Soviet broadcasts claimed that she was alive until November 12th. The New York Times even reported that she might be saved. For many years, they gave conflicting statements about her death, saying she died from either asphyxia when the batteries failed or that she had been euthanized with poisoned food. Finally, in 2002, Dmitry Malyshenkov, one of the scientists behind the mission, revealed that Laika had died from overheating by the 4th circuit of flight, approximately 5 to 7 hours into the flight. No further signs of life were received from the spacecraft. He said, "It turned out that it was practically impossible to create a reliable temperature control system in such limited time constraints." Declassified documents later showed that the flight was not easy on her. Her heartbeat rocketed to triple the normal rate, and her breath rate quadrupled. After 3 hours, her pulse rate settled back down and she ate some food, but the temperature inside the spacecraft after the 4th orbit registered over 90 degrees. She died of hypothermia a few hours into the mission. Sputnik 2 disintegrated during the re-entry on April 14th, 1958, over 5 months later after 2,500 orbits. It would be nearly 3 years before the Soviet Union orbited more animals, this time returning them safely to Earth. the first steps in preparation for human spaceflight. In the UK, the National Canine Defence League called on all dog owners to observe a minute's silence on each day Laika remained in space, while the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals received protests even before Radio Moscow had finished announcing the launch. Animal rights groups called on members of the public to protest at Soviet embassies. People attached protest signs to their pets and marched outside the United Nations in New York. Even some members of the scientific community knew it was wrong. In 1958, a Polish scientific periodical described the Sputnik 2 mission as regrettable and criticized not bringing Laika back to Earth alive as undoubtedly a great loss for science. In 1998, Oleg Gazenko, one of the scientists directly responsible for sending Laika to space, expressed regret for allowing her to die. A brief tangent, and then we'll come back to Laika. By now, you know that the Soviets rushed big time in building Sputnik 2, with most elements of the spacecraft being constructed from rough sketches, if you can believe that. So it wasn't exactly top-notch, and things just didn't work out as planned. For example, the ultraviolet and X-ray photometers they put on board to collect data, they were calibrated such that they were oversaturated by orbital radiation, so they returned no usable data. The cosmic ray detector transmitted info for 1 week and then went silent on November 9th when the battery died. So great, they got info from it for a week, right? Wrong, because Sputnik 2 telemetry could only be received when it was flying over the Soviet Union. The limited data set they received was insufficient to draw conclusions, plus the experiment reported unexpected results, I know, the day after launch, and the Soviets couldn't figure out why. Luckily, additional data had been received by Australian observers when the satellite was over Australia, so naturally Soviet scientists asked them for it. It could really help them out to have that additional data. Maybe it could even help them answer some of those important questions. So the Australians were like, yeah, we have that data, but hey, will you share the code that would give us the ability to descramble and use that data too? And the friendly Soviets said no. So of course the Australians were like, okay, too bad, and they declined to turn over their data. So the Soviet Union missed out on its chance to get credit for the scientific discovery of Earth's radiation belts, which ultimately went to James Von Allen of the State University of Iowa. That assists in my conclusion that unfortunately, Laika's sacrifice was not worth it from a scientific perspective, and you'd be hard-pressed to argue otherwise. They were able to say that they sent a living organism into orbit, but other than that basic acknowledgement, they didn't have much to show for it, other than perhaps a realistic look at how difficult it would be to send a man to space. Maybe the appearance of sending a dog to space was a short-term victory. Maybe it put more pressure on the U.S., but it is unclear what political ground was gained. The Soviets were in a huge rush. The mission had to be expedited to meet the deadline, which left them with less than 4 weeks to design and build the spacecraft. That's why much of the spacecraft didn't end up working as planned, and that's why the mission had to be a suicide one. Future space missions carrying dogs were designed for the animal to be recovered. In fact, just 3 years later, they were able to have animals orbit and return to Earth safely. If they had just waited and planned more, they could have done the same and not killed Laika. What they lacked with Sputnik 2 was time and compassion. According to Animals in Space by Colin Burgess and Chris Stubbs, the Soviet Union launched dogs into flight 71 times between 1951 and 1966, with 17 deaths. There have been a ton of animals in space, the first being fruit flies aboard a US-launched rocket in 1947. The second most notable was a cat named Félicette. Félicette was a Parisian cat that became the first feline launched into space on the 18th of October 1963 as part of the French space program. She was one of 14 female cats trained for spaceflight. The cats had electrodes implanted into their skulls to monitor their neurological activity throughout the flight. During the flight, electrical impulses were applied to the brain and a leg to stimulate responses. The capsule was recovered 13 minutes after the rocket was ignited. Most of the data from the mission was of good quality, and Félicette survived the flight but was euthanized 2 months later for the examination of her brain. Other animals launched into space include monkeys and apes, most notably used by the US, tortoises and turtles, mice, rats, rabbits, guinea pigs, fish and sea life, including carp, sea urchins, swordfish, stick insect eggs, brine shrimp, jellyfish. They also sent frogs and insects, including crickets, spiders, silkworms, carpenter bees, ants, Mexican jumping beans, worms, and geckos, newts, and snails. I'd like to read an article from August by Anna Marie Brennan. She's a senior lecturer in law at the University of Waikato in New Zealand. This is all about the ethics of animals in space. Okay, this is titled, "We've been sending animals into space for 7 decades, yet there are still no rules to protect them from harm." Animals have played a pivotal role in space exploration since the 1950s. The former Soviet Union's launch of the stray dog Laika aboard Sputnik 2 in 1957 marked the first living creature in orbit. Laika's cramped, stressful conditions and eventual death from oxygen deprivation highlighted the harsh realities of early space missions. The U.S. followed suit in 1961 with Ham, a chimpanzee sent on a suborbital flight to test task performance in space. Ham endured invasive monitoring, electric shocks for incorrect responses, and severe dehydration. Although he recovered physically, he showed signs of psychological trauma following the mission. As space exploration expands, the absence of legal protections for animals becomes increasingly problematic. International regulations are long overdue to formally recognize the sentience of animals in outer space law to safeguard their welfare before, during, and after missions. Often, animals used in missions are deemed surplus afterwards, with little legal obligation for their continued care. For example, France's Félicette, a cat sent into orbit in 1963, was euthanized post-mission for brain study despite surviving re-entry. Unlike military working animals, which undergo transition programs for civilian life, space animals lack formal exit protocols. Records of their fates are scarce, and their legal status remains ambiguous. This gap stems partly from the absence of animal considerations in outer space law. NASA committed to stewardship of research animals, encompassing acquisitional care and what happens to them after the space mission. The principles outline 3 core ethical tenets. Respect for life. Use only appropriate species in minimal numbers necessary for valid results. 2, societal benefit. Weigh the ethical value of animal use against potential societal gains. 3, non-maleficence. Minimize pain and distress, recognizing that animals may suffer similarly to humans. While these principles don't ban animal use, they promote ethical reflection and accountability. A common argument is that prioritizing animal welfare could hinder scientific progress. While violence against humans is prohibited, harm to animals for food, research, medicine, and other purposes remains widely accepted on Earth. Some question whether it would be inconsistent to restrict harm to animals in space, where human casualties are more likely. Anna concludes by saying, "We need a more balanced framework, one that acknowledges animals as sentient participants and ensures their welfare is considered alongside human interests." Now, if you clicked on this video, there's a good chance you're already familiar with Laika to some extent, likely due to the vast amount of art that she has inspired. Before I share some of that, some official tributes for Laika include: NASA named a soil target on Mars after Laika during the Mars Exploration Rover mission. Laika is memorialized in the form of a statue and plaque at Star City, the Russian cosmonaut training facility. The monument to the conquerors of space in Moscow, constructed in 1964, also includes Laika. In 2008, at the military research facility where staff had been responsible for readying Laika for the flight, officials unveiled a monument of her poised on top of a space rocket. And that's the statue you can see there. In the Soviet Union, stamps and envelopes picturing Laika were produced, as well as branded cigarettes, enamel pins, and matches. Okay, now for the art, which comes with my strongest warning that you might cry. She has been called, which I think this is so endearing. She has been called the patron saint of one-way trips. Cosmo from Guardians of the Galaxy was created as a Marvel character loosely based on the real-life story of Laika. James Gunn opted on making Cosmo a female in the MCU as a homage to Laika. We can't talk while he's drinking. Has he ever had water before? That's some good stuff, isn't it? Your beard is a little wet, sir. In 1988, the Spanish band Messano released the song Laika, paying tribute to her. The end of the song goes, "There is one less dog on Earth and one more star in the sky." There is a vegan lifestyle and animal rights periodical called Laika Magazine, published in the United States. There is a stop-motion animation studio called Laika, best known for making Coraline. I think their new movie is, right there, Missing Link. An English indie pop group took her name, and a Finnish band called itself Laika and the Cosmonauts. Novelists Viktor Pevelin of Russia, Haruki Murakami of Japan, and Jeanette Winterson of Great Britain have featured Laika in books, as has British graphic novelist Nick Abadzis. His 2007 book won several awards. Carl Schroeder wrote a science fiction novelette called Laika's Ghost. Norwegian singer Emmy released a song in 2025 titled Laika Party to compete in the Irish Eurosong selection for the 2025 Eurovision Song Contest. And then finally, an artist named Maisie Cowell created this Lost Dog poster, which really, really resonated with me. So much so that I got it tattooed a couple months ago by my pal Nico at the Estate Tattoo in Echo Park. I wore shorts today just to show it off, so here you go. Check that out. Yeah. Cody's not impressed. And the last thing, in case I haven't gotten you yet, I'm going to leave you with a poem titled First Dog in Space by Brennig Davies. They say that from space, the Earth looks like a small blue ball. But how did it look to you, Laika? From that shuttle like a balloon whose string they let go and which they never trained for recall. They say that you were a stray who never fought with other dogs, and that the clever people called you pet names through the wires of your shrinking cages, and that before you died, overheating in that heavy, weightless cold, one of them took you home and you played with his kids. They say that from space, the Earth looks like a small blue ball. I'll throw it for you, Laika, if you'll chase it. Dart through the stratosphere like a comet, undeserving of its fate. Okay. Thank you for the emotional support, Kodi. You're really good at that too. Like I said at the beginning, there are many, many dogs of history that we could do entire episodes on. So if you liked this, please let us know with a like or a comment. I know some of you may have already been familiar with Laika, but hopefully this was still engaging and entertaining, perhaps educational for those of you who haven't heard of Laika. Of course, if you enjoyed this format, let us know with a like or a comment, because there are plenty of dogs from the history books that we could do entire episodes on. So yeah, just let us know. Kodi here was excellent emotional support. Stayed still the entire time. A reminder that he is very, very adoptable from Wags and Walks here in LA. He's just a delight. He came right over here, sat beside me, laid down, and was perfect the whole time. If you enjoyed this episode, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already. If you're listening to this, add us to your playlist on Spotify or Apple Music. We just got word that you may think that this is just a typical Lammy, but its full government name is Lamuel L. Jackson. So, well, now you're squeaking it. Just squeak it over here. From me, Kodi, and Lamuel L. Jackson, we'll see you next time.
Oh, that looks like a good dog. That's a good dog. Yeah, that looks like a good